Over the years, we've had some pretty impressive startups that built their brands from scratch into billion-dollar companies. On the other hand, are those ones that seem to grow fast but ended up with a big crash. Most startups don't realize the impacts of their decisions early on, and this leaves us with stories of what not to do in business. Here are some companies that grew fast and then failed. Theranos. You may be one of the many people that followed the intriguing story of the health technology startup Theranos, and the even more astonishing founder Elizabeth Holmes. Established in 2003, this startup claimed that it had the equipment to carry out rapid blood tests with only small amounts of blood using automated devices. They called this device the Edison device, with the founder having an interesting background. When she was just 19 years old, Elizabeth dropped out of Stanford to bring her idea of Theranos to life. Of course, this was a revolutionary idea that would change the trajectory of the health industry forever if they were able to execute this perfectly. Riding on the possibilities that this startup held, several big investors were interested in the project. The company was able to raise more than $700 million from private investors like Rupert Murdoch and the Walton family. Even big venture capitalists pitched in, and this resulted in a $10 billion valuation by the time it reached its peak in 2013. By 2014, Elizabeth Holmes had become the youngest female billionaire, and everything was going well for this startup until an expose by Wall Street Journal. In the article, they questioned the blood testing machine, which revealed that they weren't working most of the time, and Theranos was faking its test processes. In fact, they were using other commercial machines to complete the test and then claimed that it was done on their machine instead. But it gets even worse. According to the complaint, Elizabeth had also falsely claimed in 2014 that Theranos had annual revenue of $100 million, which was way more than the actual figure of $100,000. The evidence offered to back this up was so overwhelming that there was no way the company could fight back effectively against the charges. All these marked the company's fast journey to the bottom. In March of 2018, Elizabeth and her secretary were charged with massive fraud and are facing trial in court. Powwow Technologies. Dan Wagner, the CEO of Powwow Technologies, had one goal in mind for the startup, and that was to make it the biggest tech firm in the living memory. So, how did they plan to achieve it? Well, he believed in their star product, which was pretty much a code scanner. If this was a new idea in 2021, only a few people would pay attention. But this was 2014, and it sounded exciting, especially as this product had its mobile app and point-of-sale terminals for retailers. Powwow was one of their debut products, was launched that year, and the buzz was all about getting consumers to use it to buy products from advertisements. All they would have to do was watch ads, and if they were interested in buying a product, they would wait for the display of a special tag and then scan it with their devices. To be fair, this was a decent idea, even though it did sound like a glorified QR scanner. The founder thought that Powwow Technologies had what it takes to overtake top tech companies like Apple for the top spot in the industry. They did have a promising start, and it looked like it wasn't such a pipe dream after all. The startup raised about $175 million in less than 2 years, with a valuation of $2.7 billion at its peak in 2015. Powwow Technologies became one of the most valuable startups at the time. Even the UK Prime Minister at the time praised the company, but the success was short-lived. This startup couldn't deliver on their product promises. The founders were pretty lavish with funds, and the higher-ups had excessive salaries. Every day was an opportunity to throw a wild party with strippers and rivers of sparkling wine. This wouldn't have been such a terrible thing for the company if Powwow Technologies was actually bringing in money. But it wasn't. By 2015, people were no longer interested in the company. They were also having trouble with paying their staff and contractors. The CEO was having an amazing time. Eventually, Powwow Technologies sold off Powwow and filed for bankruptcy. Lilly Robotics. Toward the end of 2015, Lilly Robotics pulled one of the biggest scams to ever surface in the last few decades. This was a startup that got thousands of people excited. But what was the concept? Lilly Robotics launched a crowdfunding campaign for special drones that would automatically follow anyone around while taking pictures and videos of amazing quality. It was literally the tech of the future. Surfers, travel enthusiasts, and pretty much anyone who wanted to take pictures without the trouble of finding a stranger who wouldn't be so bothered about their request were lining up for theirs. It went viral instantly, and Lilly Robotics had more than $30 million in pre-sales. Despite its huge success, Lilly Robotics was hiding a big secret. The amount they had made in pre-sales was nowhere near enough for the research and development cost of their product. But hadn't they already made those drones? Well, here's a shocker. Their product wasn't finished yet. According to some leaked emails, their promotional videos actually featured GoPro footage and not Lilly drone footages as they made people believe. Eventually, they were raided on fraud charges and were forced to offer refunds. With no money and no product, Lilly Robotics filed for bankruptcy in 2017. Webvan. By the time Webvan was shut down in 2001, they had more than $500 million invested in their company. But what were they all about? Just 2 years after Amazon was founded, Webvan came to life in 1998, with the simple idea of providing an online grocery store for customers. They had a 30-minute window to have their orders delivered right where they wanted. Webvan was a pretty interesting case, even if it was a bit too early for its time. People were not exactly ready to get their groceries online. Still, they went ahead without a detailed study of the market and moved faster than they were meant to. Webvan started with premature scaling as they immediately invested in expensive infrastructure and diversified into 10 markets. Apart from this, there was the fact that this was bad timing as both the customers and technology was not ready for Webvan. Now that you think about it, it's been more than 2 decades, and we're just getting started into the world of grocery shopping online. It is becoming a huge deal mostly because of the pandemic and how people were forced to evolve during social distancing rules. But Webvan, they were a little too fast with throwing out the money. It would have probably been a different story if they took their time to grow 2 or 3 markets at a time and not 10. Maybe impatient investors had something to do with it, but we never can tell. Webvan was one of the most famous bankruptcies that came out of the first dot-com crash, and was one of the few with no drama. It was just a startup that grew rapidly and then fell faster. Better place. When electric vehicles were slowly starting to become a thing, they came with one problem: short battery life. It took a lot of time for people to have a fully charged battery, and A Better Place thought it would be a good idea to create a solution to this problem. This problem did solve itself a few years later with manufacturers creating bigger batteries that could charge faster, but this startup was focused on battery switching. They started building a global network of battery switching and battery charging services for electric cars. With battery switching, all users had to do was get to the station and pick a fully charged battery in minutes, instead of waiting for a long charge. These battery switching stations didn't seem like the right solution, and they really were not. Better Place had $700 million invested in the startup, but could only sell about 1,500 cars, which were way too little compared to the millions pumped into the economy. Since car manufacturers were the ones designing and manufacturing the cars, Better Place was investing as much as $500,000 into every car sold. When you make a few deductions, you'll realize that there wasn't much left in terms of profit. Sadly, people weren't ready to buy these specially designed cars, and 2013 marked the end of the company. That's all you need to know about the 5 companies that grew fast and failed even faster. And that's a wrap. Is there any startup that you think should have made our list? Let us know in the comments. Did you like the video? We're always posting amazing content like this, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching.